Welcome to Strange Talk with Doc. We're going to talk a little bit about why you should learn that when you're going to talk about something, make sure it's about something that matters. If not, don't speak at all. And there's a reason I want to actually talk about this subject. Because I think we sometimes speak out of turn. We speak up when we shouldn't. We're silent when we shouldn't be silent. And I say this with all sincere humility. The Strange Talk with Doc podcast has been listened to both in its original version, which was Strange Talk with Netboy and Doc, over 1,000,000 times. If you add in Strange Talk with Doc with Netboy and Doc and Strange Talk with Doc with just myself, over 1,000,000 times over the course of the different platforms, if you add it all together. Now, I'm not saying that to be arrogant or anything like that. I've been doing this for 5 years. I mean, I'm somebody that most people have never heard of, but 1,000,000 people have taken, or 1,000,000 different times, somebody has downloaded or listened in. So with that being said, I have to use my voice, and I have to not use my voice to say outlandish things, blasphemous things, evil things, stupid things, totally ridiculous things. But I choose to be a person who decides to always say what I consider to be right. I side on the right every single chance I get. I mean, I could be wrong, but I try my best to side on the right. You know, I let you know that many of you are silent listeners and never give me feedback. And I challenge you to correct me if I'm wrong. I challenge you to speak back to me via email, post. I mean, some of you have, so I'm not talking to you, but that means there are a lot of people who listen in silence. Either I'm right on some subjects or I'm wrong on some subjects. Feedback matters to me. You can go to my website. There's always going to be a link there to on every show, no matter what app you listen on, with a way that you can remember to get back to me. And I'm going to evaluate the positives and the negatives and see if what I'm saying makes sense, then try to incorporate what you say, if it makes more sense than what I've been saying, into my life. You understand? I really do need the feedback. I enjoy the feedback. I live for the feedback. I don't ask you to subscribe. I don't ask you to share. I don't ask you to share or anything like that. I don't ask you to even join or friend me on any shape, form, or fashion of social media, because that does not matter. But I do like to hear back from the people who do listen in. And there's way too many people who listen into this program to not match some of the feedback in numbers. So on to this subject. If you're not talking about something that matters, why bother talking at all? You know, there's a time to keep silent and there's a time to speak. The tongue has power of life and death in it. Do not let any unwholesome things come out of your mouths. Only what will be helpful to building up others according to their needs. Does that not mean cater, placate them, tap them on the back, treat them as babies? But you can build a person up. Let's not forget that if a person hears negative things come towards them, they can remember them and they could change the course of their lives forever. You could be a whispering, shouting voice in their head about a negativity in their life that you have just co-signed, and they believe that this is all they are, because some people are wired that way. Or you can leave a powerful message that will help lift the person up off of the ground at the lowest point in their life. So your tongue is powerful. So use it to speak. We have to learn to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. We have to learn to speak for those who are destitute. We have to. There are too many people who are silent and they take beatings in silence. They don't have the strength, the power, the means to fight back. Remember to speak truth. Truth isn't, talk is not cheap. Talk will cost you the most. And the reason I say that talk will literally cost you the most is because you have now put your word. Word is power. Word brought the world into existence. So when you speak something, it has to be truthful because somebody can call you back up on your lie. Somebody can call you back up on your falsehood. And then that becomes your legacy, a liar, a cheat, a manipulator. You don't want to be those things. You want to be able to be called back and say, you remember that time that you was corrected by XYZ and how much it helped me? Because sometimes we don't even know who we're helping, especially if you're a parent. A parent can never be caught in a lie to their children. Your words mean so much as a parent to your child. Sometimes you don't even think about it. Think about some of the things your mother and your father and your grandparents may have told you when you were young that you still keep into consideration and you still live by those words today. Now, I am not attacking anybody who is an introvert, anybody who speaks out of depression. They speak from a different place. That is a mentality that I am not qualified to speak of because some people are introverts and they don't speak up about anything. Some people speak from a place of depression. Some people speak up from a place where their emotions one day are happy, the next day they're sad, and I don't know why this particular scientific term is escaping me right now, but it is. I'm human. I'm fallible. I make mistakes. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a person who's uber happy, and then 5 minutes later, they're in the Debbie Downer in the dumps. So their speech might have to be guarded by medication. Their speech might have to be guarded by uh, therapy. Make your words count. Make your words count. I am a person who does not speak often. You say, how can a dude who does a podcast not speak often? Believe it or not, when I don't have this stupid microphone in my face, I'm pretty much silent. I speak to my wife. I'm a person who believes in being speak when I'm spoken to. I don't initiate a lot of conversations. People that know me who listen in, they can say this as gospel. If I like you, you'll know it. But make your words count and then speak them boldly. Don't be ashamed. Don't be shy. Be passionate. Your passions come through when you speak. And if not, shut up. Shut up. Learn to listen. Now, silence speaks loudly. The loudest scream that I have ever heard in my entire life was silence. I was in a dark place. I was in a place of physical damage, and no one said a word to me. Nobody reached out to me for the most part. And that kind of silence screamed at me. That screamed that I knew my place with these particular people. And I'm not angry at them because I always blame myself for any relationship. I have 50% to do with every relationship that either goes right, either goes wrong, or either falls off the track. So I never blame anybody else for a relationship that I am in. I don't care if it's a co-worker relationship. I don't care if it's a sexual relationship. I don't care if it's a relationship because we've known each other for many years and we're associates. I have everything to do with everything that's going on around me. So finger pointing, I do not do. Okay, we have to be held responsible. You must have self-control. You shouldn't call your wife and children and those around you all kinds of words. We know these words. You shouldn't be throwing the C word, the B word, just because you're angry. Have some self-control. Don't let your anxieties take over. Take a deeper look into all subject matters that you are willing to speak up about. Don't think from the surface only. Speak from a deep place, a place of study, a place of knowledge, and your words will be true and they will stand the test of time. Never gossip. Leave that alone. Cut that out of your life completely. Don't spread rumors. Don't be a tattletale. If somebody tells you something in secret, do the very best that you can, as long as there's no children being harmed. As long as you're not crossing any lines to keep secrets where somebody was damaged for life that you can now protect because of the secret that was told you, keep it to yourself. Take it to your grave. Give it to your God. Share it with him or her, whatever it is that you need to do. Meditate on it, pray on it, but don't spread rumors and lies. You have to know your room that you're speaking in. Please watch your audience that you're speaking to. Train yourself to be disciplined enough to know who you're speaking to so you know what words you can say, what you cannot say, what that room might need to hear from you. You might be the teacher. Don't act like the student when you need to be the teacher in that room. Do not be the weak one when you need to be the strong one in that room. Learn to be the ear in that room if that's all you need to be. These are things that we can learn to do, because if we listen more, we will talk less. Irrelevant conversations are of no use. They tear things down, but intelligent conversations build things up. So learn to build things up, leave the tearing down alone. Just be very careful of your manner of speech, because you will be judged on the words that come out of your mouth. Because when our time comes, the words of our mouth should reflect the words of our heart. And if the words of our hearts are kind, loving, tender, uplifting, then we will be judged as a kind, loving, tender, uplifting person. But if the words come out of our mouths are evil, deceitful, full of jealousy, malice, and contempt for other people, we will be judged as a contemptible, malice, judgmental, angry individual. And that's not the way to go through life. That is just not the way to go through life. I am not telling you anything that you should do. I'm just planting a seed. From now on, Strange Talk with Doc, I made this clear over a year ago. I have to talk about something every show before I move on to my other subject matters. My other subject matters are not going to be trivial in my eye, because I love sports. News happens. Tragedies happen in the world. There's good television. There's good music. And those are things that we talk about here. But we also have to talk about something that matters, or there is no reason at all to do this podcast. Now I'm going to move on to the regular show now. Puerto Rico, unfortunately, Hurricane Fiona has landed, knocked out power on the island. These 85-mile-per-hour winds. My hopes and prayers for Puerto Rico are strong. I pray that the United States government treats this island with some respect, that we send some real serious money, that we send some serious engineers to help to build up their infrastructure. They are still suffering from the last hurricane. I don't know if it was Sandy. Please forgive me if I get the name wrong, but the last one that came through the islands and did damage. I mean, we send billions of dollars to these other countries. Can we send some money over to the Boricuas so that they can build up this place so it can withstand devastation, where they have generators and water and means, so that when things like this happen, they don't have to get ready. They'll be ready. Now, we've had this never-ending Queen Elizabeth II funeral. This thing seemed like it's been going on for 2 weeks. I believe as of today, this is finally it. It is finally over. They let her rest in peace if that's what they want to do, because I believe she's been in state. The coffin's been traveling from here to there. People have been standing on line for in excess of 12, 13 hours. I would not have done it. I would have looked deeper into the royal family, and I would, even if I was British, I would not be really concerned with them any more than I would be concerned with a next door neighbor, because I don't put people above people because of titles. I think that you earn your title as a good human being, and that's what counts the most. Now, I've been talking about this Geno Jennings And my wife came up with a term to refer. See, now I'm very careful about. I just gave a whole thing about how to speak and what to say and how to say it. My wife came up with a term for Geno Jennings, Pastor Geno Jennings people, and they're called the Jennonites because they do not represent any form of Christianity that I've ever seen. When you comment on anything to do with Mr. Geno Jennings, these people attack you, but they do it in a passive aggressive type style. They tell you your downfalls, a total stranger. They tell you how you are not good enough in God's eye because you just don't have the spirit. And because you don't have the spirit, you don't have the right to speak of this man of God because we get it and nobody else gets it, but we get it. Now, so what I do is I decide not to fight with them. I have a podcast. Anybody is welcome to come on my podcast and we can get down here. If I'm going to help you, you're going to help me. I am not going to make a fool of myself by making 9,000 posts on some YouTube video. It's just not me. I say what I say and I move on. If not, I would be a fraud, and I refuse to be fraudulent. So with that being said, I have now made sure that everything that has anything to do with this gentleman and his people, I have blocked it. I don't want to see it. I don't want this in my world. I don't need this kind of negativity. I know that they're out there, but they can do their own thing. I wasn't bothering them, and I will no longer let them bother me. So young brother named PnBRock, he was 30 years old. He goes by the real name of Rakim Allen. He was murdered in California. He's a rapper. I tried to look this character up. I mean, his music really wasn't for me, but he touched some souls, obviously. And I feel bad, but we have to get to the point. And I mean, you should be allowed to do what you want to do, but there are a lot of people in this world who are starving, man. There are a lot of people in this world who don't know where their next meal is. They don't know how they're going to pay their bills. And when they see people sporting tons of jewelry, they get something in their spirit. And it's a wrong spirit to want to take anything from anybody that you did not earn. If you did not earn it, you don't have the right to possess it unless it was given to you freely. I mean, sometimes you are just gifted things. And that happens in this world. It doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen to a lot of people, but some people are just gifted with things from others because they just have the spirit to give it to them. But you don't have the right to not only take a life, but you don't have the right to think that somebody does not have the right to own something that they earned. But I wish that rappers would really evaluate this and know that when you're out there by yourself, I mean, because a rapper was killed in the Bronx a couple of months ago, let's not push the issue, man, because people will set you up. I mean, this is reality. Street guys know this. This young man was from Philadelphia. He has to know the rules and regulations of how the street run. I mean, we don't just let everybody run around with a ton of jewelry. So it's just not what happened. Was convicted again. This time he was convicted in a federal court in Chicago. This man had a life. He not only had a life, this same charge that he was convicted of, say 20 years ago, he had got away with this. If he would have changed his ways right then and there, maybe he would not be in the situation that he is. I did a show about not letting your dick control your body. So I'm not going to go into that because the dick controlling your body is not just a physical thing. It's also a psychological thing. It's an emotional thing. And we cannot allow that type of thing to happen. Or we get lost, we lose ourselves. So I watched House of Dragons, but I did not watch the House of Dragons episode 5. Only on episode 4. And it was a very interesting one. It dealt with incest. It dealt with also the fact that there was a plan B all the way back in this fictional time, which I thought was kind of cool. You know, she got herself potentially in some trouble, and the Meester was able to give her a plan B drink and say, this will take care of it and let's move on with life. I watched the dark side of comedy. It dealt with Richard Pryor. I thought it was a good episode, but I thought that they could have also dealt with not just Richard's dark side, but Richard's super success in movies. They talked about his stand up, but they didn't really talk about his movies. He made some very successful movies with Gene Wilder, and you wouldn't even know it if you've seen this. I also watched the WWE Legends. I watched the Rey Mysterio one. I watched the DX one, and I also watched the WrestleMania one. They were all very good. If you're a wrestling fan, and even if you just like documentaries and you remotely know these people, this WWE Legends on A&E was a very good 8-part series. I highly recommend it. So the Las Vegas Aces are the 2022 WNBA champions. Congratulations on bringing a title to the Las Vegas Strip, ladies. Chelsea Gray is your MVP. Becky Hammond, who worked with my San Antonio Spurs, was the head coach. So they have a championship. I got to check that parade out online. I think it's going to be from Caesar's Palace to Bellagio. If you've been to Vegas, you know that. This should be hyped. I mean, think about it. They're going to end with the fountains probably going off, and they're going to be on some dais there. That, you know what? I don't know if that's walking down the Canyon of Champions, but that sounds pretty hot to me. Roger Federer has finally decided to retire from tennis. He's 41 years old. He's won 20 Grand Slam championship, and he's quit. Well, he's not saying quitting. Let me take that back. The man is not quitting. He's retiring. He's retiring after the Labor Cup, which I believe is this week. The NBA has announced it's going to discipline the Phoenix Sun and Mercury owner, Robert Salva. He's going to be fined $10 million and suspended from all league functions for 1 year. Now, everybody's asking for his head hardcore style when they could have did this while the proceedings were going on. You know, after the fact, we all can scream, shake, shit, and holler. Once again, it's knowing when to speak, a time to be silent, and a time to speak up. These people had a time to speak while this ruling was still being made, to put the seed in the commissioner, to put the seed in the general public's ear. But after the decision comes down, it's kind of bad. This is not the Deshaun Watson case where everybody was screaming for an appeal and they got it. They needed to shake this tree up while the tree's nuts were still on it, not after they fell on the ground. Now that the nuts are on the ground, who cares? You know, he got away with some dastardly things for a very long time, and 1 year suspension. He's going to take it as a vacation. He's probably going to be still running this organization from the sidelines. That's just the way it goes. Elias Theodorou, the Spartan, the Ultimate Fighter Nations champion winner, has died of cancer at the age of 34. Elias was a very good fighter. Was he championship level fighter? No, he was not, but he was a very good fighter. I enjoyed him. He always came to fight. He's such a young man. I didn't even know he was sick. I mean, I wish those who love him and his family nothing but the best. I wish them peace in this bad time in their lives, but he's not suffering with cancer anymore. The UFC had a fight night this week in Corey Sandhagen versus Yudong Sung. I have not seen the main card. I've only watched the prelims. I watched the prelims before football yesterday. Aspen Ladd missed weight once again, so her fight with Sarah McMahon was canceled. I thought that was pretty bad. Actually, the prelims to this Corey Sandhagen Yudong Sung card was pretty good. If you have not watched it and UFC fan, you can still get at it. Now, the UFC is going to take off this week, and they're coming back on the 1st, October 1st, and we're going to have Mercedes Dern fighting Jan. That should be pretty good. Now, we're going to talk some NFL. So the Colts released Rodrigo Blankenship. He was the kicker. He had missed the kick last week in overtime when the Texans were playing the Seahawks. No, he actually missed the kick. He's the Colts kicker. and he missed the kick versus the Texans. And they didn't play any games. I mean, the Colts got problems, man. We'll get to that in a minute, but the Colts got problems. They got rid of their kicker. And Jamal Adams, the ex-Jet, who's now the Seahawks safety, he's going to be out for the 2022 season. He tore his quad. Now, the Giants improved to 2-0 for the first time since 2016 with a 19-16 win over the Panthers. This was not a very good game on either team's part. Saquon Barkley did not repeat game one. I mean, if my Cowboys play the Giants next week, I'm hopeful because the Giants did not look as good as they did the first week. I mean, he was running roughshod, but that seemed to be over. And the Jaguars beat the Colts yesterday, 24-0. The Jags shut out a team. They have a 8-game home winning streak versus the Colts. The Colts cannot. Now, we're talking about 3 different quarterbacks. We're talking about Carson Wentz. We're talking about Matt Ryan. And we're talking about Rivers. And none of them have beat the Jaguars at home. And the Jaguars have been a very bad team over the last, if you say this is 8 games, this took at least 4 seasons. They have not had any success whatsoever during this point in time, other than it seemed like at home against the Colts. Now, the craziest game of the week was the Dolphins beating the Ravens 42-38. Tua Tagovailoa scored 6 touchdowns. He threw 2 interceptions, but he had 6 touchdowns. I mean, the fourth quarter comeback was one for the ages. Waddell and Hill were going crazy. And Lamar Jackson, I feel horrible for him. He had a phenomenal game. He threw for 3 touchdowns. He ran for almost 120 yards, but he went home with the L. I don't know what happened to the Ravens defense in that between the middle of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, where they allowed the Dolphins to just chip away. And before you know it, it was in overtime and it was over. Matter of fact, I believe they won this game before overtime. It was on a last second drive, but it was a phenomenal game. 42-38. You get 80 points of scoring in a professional NFL game. That doesn't happen often. The Patriots beat the Steelers 17-14. Mac Jones hit a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. The Steelers don't have much of an offense. Trubisky stinks. The Jets beat the Browns 31-30 on that new stupid logo of some kind of elf, imp, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Joe Flacco went back into the vault, pulled out a drive that we didn't even think that he still had in him, but he led the Jets up the field, and he looked like he was 31 years old on this drive. He was hitting people left and right, and the Browns just caved in. They wasted another good game by Chubbs. I feel bad that he has to be involved with this. They had a chance to get an onside kick to end this in before this game. The ball went back to the Jets, and Cooper just got pushed out of the way, and the Jet picked it up, and that was the end of that. The Bucs finally snapped a 4-game losing streak to New Orleans Saints. They had 5 second-half turnovers, and they beat them 20-10. Jameis Winston was throwing interceptions left and right and left and right. I was like, everybody wants to give him credit for improving, and then he seems to regress. The Lions beat the Commanders 36-27. This was back and forth. I thought every time that the Lions had them on the rope and it was getting ready to say goodbye, the Commanders would score again. But Jared Goff threw 4 touchdowns, and 2 of them was to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a problem, people. He is going to be an issue and a problem. I believe he set some kind of record for 8 straight games of at least 8 catches, and I think only like 4 or 5 people in history have done that. Not only that, he was their leading rusher and the leading pass receptor, so he had a hell of a game. The Rams held on to beat the Falcons 31-27. Stafford to Cup I mean, that is a major issue in the NFL. This dude is catching 10, 11, 12 catches a week. Matthew Stafford loves going to him. And two teams find a way to shut down Cooper Kupp, they're going to have a hard time beating the Rams. The Rams will be competitive. As much as I dislike them, I have to respect their gangster. They have a good enough defense, and this combination is outlandish. The 49ers beat the Seahawks 27-7, but the news of this game was Trey Lance is injured for the year. He broke his ankle, so Jimmy Garoppolo replaced him. He played steady enough. He looked pretty good. I mean, he's very familiar with the offense, so it should be no issues there at all. And so he led the 49ers to a 27-7 victory. Geno Smith came back down to earth. He did not look good at all. Matter of fact, the Seahawks offense looked abysmal. My Dallas Cowboys beat the Bengals 20-17. Cooper Rush led a drive, and then Brett Maher kicked a game-winning 50-yard field goal with a couple of seconds left in the fourth quarter for the win. The Cowboys, I thought, had this game in hand. At one time, they were up 17-3, but they allowed the Bengals to come back. That offensive line is doing nothing to help Joe Burrow, but the Cowboys' defense does look good. The offense doesn't look particularly good, but the defense on the Cowboys looks very good. The Broncos beat the Texans 16-9. This was a sloppy game for Russell Wilson, but they were good enough to beat the Texans, who nobody expects anything from. Actually, Russell Wilson got booed at home in Denver, his very first game. I mean, I'm sure he's in total disbelief and shock about that, but he got the W, so what does he really care? The Cardinals beat the Raiders 29-23 in overtime. There was a fumble recovery in overtime that was returned for a TD. Kyler Murray was running all over the place. For all the people that think that Kyler Murray is done, he is far from done. He showed some things yesterday. He kept drives alive. He kept plays alive. He scored the tying touchdown that led to them going to overtime. He threw the 2-point conversion that actually to AJ Green that actually sealed them to go to overtime. And on top of it, the Raiders blew a 20-point deficit. So Kyler never gave up on the game. At times he looked confused, he looked lost, but at the end of the day, he led them to victory. And what else can you ask for? The Bears played the Packers. The Packers won 27-10. Aaron Jones rushed for 132 yards and a touchdown. Plus, he scored on a pass from Aaron Rodgers. So with Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers, it wasn't a spectacular 2-game start to the season for Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Jones is who they should be relying on because they have a very strong run game in Green Bay, and that's where they really need to lean on if they want to win games. Aaron can dinky dunk and learn these new receivers, but this is not going to be one of those 4,400, 4,800-yard season, 40 touchdown seasons for Aaron. It doesn't seem that way. At least it doesn't seem that way right now. Now, Monday night, we got 2 games on Monday night, so take this as a special treat. At 7:15 Eastern Standard Time, you got the Titans going in to play Buffalo Bills. I'm taking the Bills in this game. And at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, you got the Vikings going into Philadelphia to play the Eagles. I am taking the Vikings in this game. Now, also, Week 3, these are what I consider to be the big games of Week 3. You got the Raiders versus the Titans. They might be both in desperate need of victories. You got the Bills versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins are balling. We know the Bills are for real. This could be for supremacy of the AFC East. You got Green Bay versus the Bucks. Anytime you got Rodgers versus Brady, that's something. You got the Rams versus the Cardinals. That's an interdivisional rivalry game. You got Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald going against Kyler Murray, and the Cardinals are still starving. They got to prove that victory in overtime wasn't a fluke. You got the 49ers versus the Broncos. Jimmy G versus Russell. And then Monday night football, you got my Cowboys are going into MetLife to play the Giants. This is going to be, believe it or not, a pretty big game in week 3 because it's going to prove, can Cooper Rush lead them to 2 victories in a row, which would set them up to be in good shape when Dak Prescott returns, or will the Giants go to 3-0 and make my life miserable because Giant fans will then be talking nonsense out of this world if they go to 3-0. Now, next week, the topic of the show is I am good with myself. God created me like this. Now, you could take that any way you want it. I'm not coming out of the closet if that's what you're trying to think of. So stop being silly, okay? But I am good with myself. God created me like this. And I'm going to go into discussion about why you should be good with yourself because God created you the way that you are. I mean, does that mean there's things that you should work on? Sure, we're not perfect. We was not born perfect, but we were born as we were. Remember, people, if you're not talking about something that matters, why bother talking at all? There's a time to keep silent and a time to speak. Remember that. Once again, it's a time to keep silent and you have a time to speak. Everything comes in season. Guard your tongue. Guard your tongue. You know, he who guards his mouth and his tongue guards his soul from trouble. Remember that. And I'm going to tell you, like I tell you each and every time, people, peace to you and peace to yours.